Well, you asked for it, and now I'm gonna do it, and it's gross and it's bloody, and I love it. These are the top 5 things you need to know about Jack the Ripper. Part 1. Why are we doing this in 2 parts? Because it's just too much. Before we get into this, I quickly want to shout out Happy Bomb. Each shirt on their website supports a different cause. This one supports diabetes. Get it? No pricks. I'm also talking about a serial killer, so this is pretty apt. If you like this shirt, they have this and so many more. Follow the link in the description. Despite being one of the most infamous serial killers of all time, Jack the Ripper's identity is still a mystery. So if we can't start with the man, where do we start? Oh, with the murder, of course. This isn't intimidating at all. Number 5, Whitechapel. Before we get into the guts, let's chat about location. Jack the Ripper operated from August 7th to November 9th, 1888 in the Whitechapel district of London. So let me paint the Whitechapel scene for you. Crime was rampant, which normalized it. A murder in the streets was more like litter in the sheets. Also, the motivation to murder could have been as simple as, she had bread I wanted to eat. The death rate there was so high that the police academy used to send new recruits there just to do the highest level of danger assessment training. Another fun nugget about Whitechapel is that it was riddled with slaughterhouses. It's pretty hard to point out a killer when everyone is walking the streets covered in blood. There are a few reasons why this background is specifically important. It was known for its crime, so much that people would come to Whitechapel just to commit crime and then get out of there because they didn't want to die in that hellhole. The police were completely overwhelmed by crime, and the murder of a prostitute was way low on their priority list. I'll talk about this later, but Jack had to beg the police and media for attention, which he did. A lot. Number 4, the Canonical 5. The official Jack the Ripper case only claimed about 5 victims. Okay, not only all life is precious, 5 is 5 too many, I get it. But in the scope of things, like compared to the other people, 5 is not that many. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so let's start at the start. Ann Nichols. Mary's body was found August 31st, 1888 at 3:40 a.m. in the middle of the road. Her throat was slashed twice and her lower torso was completely ripped open. The wound on her abdomen was deep and jagged, like a botched gutting. It's almost like he was looking for something. Interesting. Annie Chapman. Annie's body was found outside near a doorway on September 7th, 1888. Again, her throat was slashed twice and her torso was ripped open, but this time her uterus was removed. Sign me up. Elizabeth Stride. Elizabeth's body was found September 30th, 1888. Unlike the previous victims, Elizabeth's throat was sliced in one clean cut, which severed the main artery. However, she didn't have the abdominal slashes the other victims had, so some question if this was the work of the Ripper. My assumption is that the Ripper got startled by somebody, fled the scene, and didn't have time to play with the guts. Aw, shucks. Catherine Eddows. Catherine's body was found just 45 minutes after Elizabeth's. Oh, maybe he's just rushing off to Catherine's murder. That's why he didn't have time to play with her guts. I get it. He had an appointment. The throat was slashed and the abdomen was crudely ripped open. He took her left kidney and most of her uterus. Catherine's death incited a slew of conspiracies surrounding the identity of the killer because of the graffiti that was left in blood over her body. Blood graffiti. Get hip! Gangs, don't. Unless it's menses, and then that's kind of like a thing, you know? Mary Jane Kelly. Unlike the other victims, Mary's body was found in her home. She was completely disemboweled and her face was hacked to pieces. To be grossly specific, her throat was cut all the way to the spine and her abdomen was completely emptied of its organs, which he placed neatly next to her. They're not neat. It wasn't neat at all. There was a ton of blood. These deaths were linked by historical documents, but some modern day accounts suggest that 3 of these murders were by the hands of the Ripper, and the other 2 sloppier murders were by lazy copycats. Number 3, Ripper's outreach. As I mentioned earlier, graffiti was found at the scene of Catherine's murder. Above her body was the sentence, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." Now, if you don't understand old-timey double negative speak, that means blame the Jew. The meaning of the sentence has been disputed for centuries, but it is no secret that anti-Semitism was extremely prevalent in this time in history, and in every time in history. Hi. We'll get into what this means in part 2, but we're still uncertain if this message was supposed to throw off the police or bring attention to the crime. But this wasn't the last time the Ripper would call out for attention. He wrote the infamous Dear Boss letter, wherein he gave himself the nickname Jack the Ripper. How embarrassing. Don't give yourself nicknames. I tried it. People call me dog meat. Give me a nickname.
Loser.
Loser, she said. She said loser. The letter reads, Dear Boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I've laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ear off and send to the police officers, just for jolly, wouldn't you? Initially, the letter was dismissed as one of the many hoaxes surrounding the Ripper case. But when Catherine's body was found 3 days later with one of her ears missing, the cops went into full freakout mode. They made the dumb decision to print the letter in the paper to garner leads, but as I've said before, and I will say a million times, people are the worst. Hundreds upon hundreds of letters from fake Jacks flooded the police force. But not only was this hella annoying, it also added a layer of confusion to this already incredibly confusing case. I'll highlight specifics from the letter in the next episode that hint at the psychology of the killer, but baby, you gotta wait for that. In part 2, I'll profile the killer just given the hard evidential facts. We'll get a feel for who this dude is emotionally, and then we'll get into the fun stuff. Conspiracy theories. Thank you all so much for watching part 1 of Jack the Ripper. Be sure to come back next Monday for part 2. And then also, if you haven't heard, we have a new gaming channel called Slaytrix. Go subscribe. I'm there. Follow me. Follow me, children. Follow me.